Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. So this time I'm going to be talking about Arms Warriors. Now, if you don't play a warrior, keep on listening, because Arms Warriors are really interesting, and what Blizzard have done here with talents has basically created two new specs, which is pretty crazy, and overall, yeah, this is going to be pretty interesting. So first of all, I'll just talk about the problems that Arms used to have on the beta. Essentially, their rage regen wasn't that high, and they didn't really have any filler that was particularly fun to use. And there was a lot of downtime. That's basically now solved. So what they've done is they have first increased your base regeneration by 20% for rage, which is nice, and they also added Rend back into the game. Now Rend is, I think, the same. It basically just does a dot for 16 seconds with most of the damage being stacked up at the end of the dot, which is fine. So your base rotation is basically, you know, Colossus Smash, Mortal Strike, maintain your Rend, of course, and you can use Whirlwind. This is strange. You can use Whirlwind as your filler, and then of course Execute can basically be, you know, at like under 20% or whatever. So that's what's going on now. Of course, because of the way talents are now done, you can have, say, Dragon's Roar and Bladestorm at the same time, which is sort of mental, but also does give you a lot of different things to do. So when it's left with its sort of base default rotation, it's fine. It's not particularly interesting though, and there still is a bit of downtime. So what they have done is they've basically revamped the talents, and to do that I'm just going to go and cut in-game to the target dummies to show off the new talents, because they are so cool. Okay then, so here we are at the target dummies. Now, the first thing you'll notice is the level 45 talents are not your shouts anymore. Basically, the level 45 talents seem to be more interesting to me than any of the others. Which is weird, but that's basically what's going on. So we've got Taste for Blood, which basically means that your Rend will you know, regen rage when it does damage, so that's fine. Then there's Sudden Death, which means your auto attacks have a 10% chance to proc a free execute that can be used at any amount of health. And then finally, Slam has been added back into the game. Now, Slam is basically the filler that Arms sort of lacked. So this will slam your opponent doing 50% weapon damage. Really, the initial slam doesn't do much, but each consecutive use of Slam will give you a buff. Now this buff will increase the damage dealt by Slam by 50% and its rage cost by 100%, and that stacks up to 2 times. So Slam's not incredibly powerful, but it is a viable filler, I suppose. Now that's nice, it fills up the downtime in your rotation, so that's pretty cool. Then we have the level 60 talents, which are Stormbolt, Shockwave, and Dragon Roar. I just usually go with Dragon Roar because I do believe it is, like, it's your main single target one. So that's, I'd say, what everyone will be using. And then your level 90 talents, you can do Avatar, which I believe isn't that great at the minute. Then there's Bloodbath and Bladestorm. The reason I went for Bloodbath is, I think it was because I was trying to do single target. I'm not even sure what one's the best, so we'll just move over to Bladestorm because I'm going to be showing you something pretty cool. And then you've got Anger Management, which of course most of you guys have probably already seen the level 100 talent video, but this basically just reduces your cooldowns whenever you spend Rage. This throws out an Asgrim Ravager, and this will do a lot of damage in your weapon, and then, like, put this 10-second buff, which basically means your weapon's on fire. And, of course, you want to maintain your weapon being on fire. But anyway, the first thing I'm going to show you is the AOE spec. Notice that I say spec. Yeah, these feel like different specs. So what you can do in a heavy AOE situation is, if I can just hit all my buttons right. Now, these, you know, the health in these guys is not going to be scaled right, because these are level 70 targets. Do we have any Cataclysm ones that are close together? These are the closest together ones, and there's not many people here. So, we Dragon's Roar, we Ravager, and we do this. Look at all of that DPS going out. So, this is essentially your go-to AoE build, and this is what I was using in dungeons. And it really is a lot of fun to use. Now, one strange thing is they're all 1-minute cooldowns, which is a little bit bizarre. Of course, Bloodbath's there. Perhaps that would be better as a single target thing. I'd imagine it would be better than Bladestorm. And then, of course, things like Ignite Weapons. So let's move over to... we just gotta wait for all these things to come off cooldown. So, yeah, while we're doing that, I'll just show you Slam. So let's, you know what, we're at 100 Rage. And here's what happens when we use Slam. See, now it costs 20. Now it costs 30. But, of course, it's a very short debuff. And if you look at this, like, I'm basically... It does take me a little bit of a while to get rid of all of my Rage with Slam. So it is pretty cool. And now next, Sudden Death. Essentially, like, it doesn't add filler, but it does add a really cool proc that's very effective, because right now, Execute's insanely OP at the minute. But yeah, So sudden deaths like that, and then Taste for Blood is useful in that... Let's see, well, if we just move over to that. And this is useful in that you can deal a lot of... well, get a lot of rage back. So I'm just sitting here gaining a whole bunch of rage. Now, if I was AoEing and all these things were on cooldown, I'd just be able to use a lot of whirlwinds and things like that, or at least a lot more because I'm getting that extra rage, which is pretty handy. So let's move over to something a little bit more single target focused. So, you know, we'll put on Sudden Death just to show you what that's like. Then Bloodbath and Ignite Weapon. Now, the reason I haven't been using Ignite Weapon on the beta is really a very simple reason. Basically, I can't track it with an add-on, and I couldn't be bothered manually looking at my, like, my cooldowns and stuff all the time. So, yeah, ultra lazy, but that's... Did I just replace the wrong thing there? Oh, that's where Ravager was. Okay, so let's go ahead and use this. Now, get some rage. Cost 30 rage, puts my weapon on fire. And when it's on fire, it does fire damage, which I imagine means it does more damage, which is nice. As you can see, this is about to run out, so you want to refresh it so that it's always active. And then, of course, your like downtime here is either going to be spent by any execute procs. I, for some reason, haven't got any, which is strange. And then Whirlwind. Yes, Whirlwind is actually a filler spell now. So this is a different way of playing. It's a lot more kind of slow and calculated. And perhaps some people will like that, perhaps some won't. But overall, there's a lot of choice here, at least. I'm not really trying to... I'm not playing fast here or anything. I'm just trying to show people kind of what's going on with the abilities. And I guess it is fun enough. But... I mean, I do prefer it with Slam, honestly, so that everything's a little bit just, you know, more faster, crazy, and a bit mental. So, yeah, that's what's going on with the Warrior. Right, I'm going to cut back some dungeon footage, and I'll just talk about my impressions of the whole thing. Alright, time for impressions. So first of all, I think that it's great there's so much choice there, and it's great that the choice is really meaningful. However, there are one or two little complications that brings. First of all, you do have a lot of customization, but one choice of talents, or set of talents, is the absolute, like, perfect thing to do for AoE, and one is, the other one is the single target version. So if you are a warrior and things stay like this, you'll be lugging around lots of Tombs of Clear Mind or whatever, because you'll be swapping out your talents all the time. Now that could get really annoying, but I suppose it does mean that you can customize your playstyle. And honestly, they do feel basically like different specs. Maybe not completely different specs, but it feels like two different versions of arms in a way. And that really is worthwhile, and it's just a lot of fun. So I've got to say that the customization perspective of this class is just feeling really, really good. And for the most part, like, they have fixed the problems that were there with the downtime. I still find it weird using Whirlwind as a filler when I have to, but whatever, I suppose that's just the way it's going to work now. Then another thing is that there are lots of 1 minute long cooldowns. Now that's great because you can line them all up and do some crazy AoE damage, but I don't know, it does feel a bit strange, just the fact they are all 1 minute. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, necessarily. But I suppose what it does mean is that if you have a new trash pack coming in every minute, or, you know, if you're just generally going through trash, it's going to be handy having everything just sort of line up like that. Plus, the way the talents work is awesome that it does give you a lot more buttons. Sure, they did prune many, like, warrior buttons, but at the end of the day, you add in at least 3 more, well, usually 3 more, depending if you get any passives, with your talents. So, there's a lot of buttons there, a lot of cooldown-based things. Which is, I suppose, different. Well, I guess Warriors have already, like, always had quite a lot, but it doesn't feel very kind of numbers squishy or anything, or not numbers, it doesn't really feel like an ability prune, honestly. But it does feel good to play with, I suppose, and that's really what matters. Overall, though, I'm really surprised at how much I've been enjoying this Arms Warrior. Okay, it is apparently completely overpowered in terms of the damage it's doing at the minute, but that's only a beta thing. So there's that. Now, in terms of the other talents that I talked about, Ravager, of course, there for your PV, or not your PV, your AoE. Now, anger management's pretty interesting. It means that every 30 rage you spend reduces your remaining cooldowns by your readiness affected abilities, essentially just, you know, your main cooldowns. It'll reduce all them by 1 second for every 30 rage that you spend. Now, if you're spending a lot of rage, and you have all these 1 minute cooldowns, potentially, then you could really be using a lot of cooldowns and a lot of abilities. So I think there's a lot of potential with this class. They may need to refine 1 or 2 more things just to get a really sort of tuned in design. But overall, just on the whole, it's fun, and they have done essentially what they needed to do to fix the problem with Arms Warriors. So if you are a warrior, I'd say don't fret. Your class has not been completely bollocks. Thankfully, I was very worried about warriors. And they have definitely, I think, preserved the idea of not hitting as much, but hitting very hard. Like, they preserved that, but also allowed us to use a lot of abilities. It's not like, say, with Fury, where you have Wild Strike with its 0.5 second cooldown, or global cooldown. Like, everything here's got the full-on GCD, and it does feel a little bit more slow-paced. Whereas Fury just feels like mashing the clean crap out of something with your 2 axes. Anyway, so that's basically my opinions on the Arms Warrior. Essentially, it's a lot of fun, and you know what? Doing Dragon Roar, Blade Storm, Ravager is just fun, and you'll see that I was doing that a lot in this dungeon footage, at least in some of the trash packs, and it was fun, it felt good. Though, of course, actually one thing I should probably say is you don't want to use Ravager if it's a mobile fight, because obviously things will run away from your Ravager, and you will be basically having a sad day. Anyway, that's essentially it. Arms are awesome. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you next time.